if you can.
Yeah.
That.
Oh, that's cool. It's a little blurry in the back shot there. I can't really see it.
You're very close to the camera. You
Oh,
just
I am
gotta.
not going to see that, but yeah, I just see your Hot Shots background right now.
Oh, that's yeah. Oh, I know because it's. Hang on. Is that any better?
Okay, now it's gone again.
Oh,
You're too high tech for me. I can see you.
oh, oh. Well, it's a first appearance in the northwest of Union. Fred Turner, Frank Ludwig, Randy Bachman, Chris Layton, Linden Museum benefit concert. Yeah, that was. Anyway, okay. So where were we?
We're just talking about Ironhorse. So I mean,
Oh yeah,
both these bands ended up having very low success. Although Ironhorse's first single, what's your hurry, darling, did hit both Billboard and RPM charts in the '80s.
yeah, and
But
well, and the reason that failed, which I think I alluded to before in an email, um, it got on all the secondary markets, started to do really well, and then the next step is to get on the majors. And but what happened? We were signed. The band was signed with Scotti Brothers, and of course, when you Scotti Brothers, you don't really think about it. That sounds pleasant. But talking to Chris Layton, the drummer of Ironhorse, said, "Oh, they actually got to meet Tony Scotti, and they went to his house when because they were opening for the Beach Boys at one point. There was a bunch of stories that came with that. Poor Brian Wilson. Uh, well, he just fried his brains on drugs, because yeah, Chris was telling me, he says, oh yeah, he says before the show, he said we were out in the big Coliseum, and he says I'm passing a frisbee back and forth. And he said, Brian comes and says, oh, can I play that too? And I said, sure, okay. So Chris takes the frisbee and throws it, through the air to Brian. And of course, Brian's reaction, he goes like this, and the frisbee goes whacks him right in the head, and he starts to cry. And it's like, oh dear. So children out there, do not do drugs. Anyway, so well, okay, back to the story. Anyway, so he said when they went to Tony, there's a gate and there's a security lights. Yeah, what you want? He says, oh, we're here to see Tony Scotti. Yeah, Tony Scotti. Who is it? So it's Randy Bachman. Hang on a minute. I'll get Mr. Scotti. But and he was like, and they see that he's like an ex-boxer, right? And he's clearly mob, right?
yeah,
He was really frightening. And they go there like, but what happened, of course, is the U.S. government was starting to really look closely at recording companies and payola and the corruption in the industry. And then one of the labels they were looking at was Scotti Brothers. So Scotti Brothers thought, discretion being the better part of valor, we'll just shut down operations till the government goes away. So they did, which was lovely for them, but not so lovely for the What's Your Hurry, Darling, which then went into oblivion. That was it. You get up to bat, and if you don't swing the bat or don't get to swing the bat or nobody throws the ball, you're done. So that was it for that album. So instead of saying, well, let's try again with a second single or another album, the next thing I know, Graham Waymark says, "Oh, Frank, we got off the label. We dumped quit Scotti Brothers, or Randy did, and we ended up on Portrait, which was a fairly new subsidiary of CBS. I forget the name of the guy that was the head of Portrait, but he had a pretty good track record. And anyway, so we do. And at one point, Graham says, "Oh yeah, Randy's kind of expressing an interest in bringing Fred in. How would you feel about that?" And I said, "Oh, that'd be great." And he says, "Well, maybe you should go and talk to Fred." So he gave me Fred's contact number, and I went up to the North Shore and whoops, oh,
right.
okay, went up to the North Shore and met Fred, had a very lovely chat with him. Um, met his pit bull and at the door. Anyway, the next thing I know, so I go down next time to Randy's studio, and Randy seemed he says, "Oh, I understand you talked to Fred," and I think maybe Randy thought I had was going behind his back or something, and it was like at the behest of Graham Waymark, who is the manager, right?
Right.
Um, and I said, "Yeah, I went and met Fred, and we had a nice chat, and I think he's going to come and work with us." So we went in. Fred came in. We started doing some stuff together. But the Union album was really like partly the new thing with Fred, and Fred wrote the title track on Strike, which I ended up being the singer for, which I thought, oh, that's interesting, that's cool, you know. um, and it was all very exciting to work with those guys. But I think maybe, oh, but then we had some remnants. Randy I think had started feeling guilty about the fact that I should have had a solo deal and been off, right?
Right.
And said, "Oh, we should some of these songs that don't work for Ironhorse, we should do a Frank Ludwig solo album." And of course, that's good for yeah, I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
So songs like "Next Stop London" was really for the Frank Ludwig solo album, and that's why it's kind of different from the "Keep the Summer Alive" and all that stuff, right? I mean, the stuff with Fred, is rock, and it was more like BTO, right?
Yeah.
And Fred's got this huge voice and can just, scream like you wouldn't believe. It's pretty awesome. He's got a great range. So so part of the album is Union, and then there's a couple of tracks that were Frank Ludwig's solo album. I'm not sure. I still like to this day a song called "This Is the Only Way to Fly,"
Oh yeah. Yeah.
um, and I wrote that, and that was kind of a I don't know if you listen to it much, but the lyrics uh, are basically saying in life you'll be under all sorts of pressure to be something you're not, and everybody else has the answer. And then the last verse says, "I kind of like who I am, just the way that I am." The Popeye creed. I am what I am, and that's all that I am. Uh, I'll just, this is the only way to fly is just the way I want to. Because the first verse is about someone. Oh heck, I can't remember. I have to hang on a sec. Walking down the alleyway, saw a man. Oh no, that's the second verse. Second verse is about a Hare Krishna guy coming up saying, "Oh, join us. This is the only way to fly." Right?
Oh, nice.
And the first verse was about a kind of a seedy character on the street wanting me to do drugs. And so it was kind of a protest against what I'd been sort of seeing in other areas of the rock business. I got a tryout for April Wine at one point in my life. I was just about to leave Brutus, uh, and because it was a little too edgy for me in a lot of ways. uh, Little boy from Chemainus, and what was his name? Steve Lang had just been recruited by April Wine to replace Jim Clench. And Steve Lang said to Miles, "Oh, this Frank Ludwig guy in Toronto you should get him." So they brought me up. I drove up to Montreal and I stayed with Jerry Mercer, the drummer, who's just a monster drummer and just a great guy. Um, and did the studio stuff. But at one one night, uh, it's about 2 a.m. We're recording, and one of the guys came out and said, "Oh, how you doing, Frank?" I said, "Oh, pretty good." He said, "Are you getting tired?" I said, "Oh, a little bit, but I'm all right." He said, "Oh, come on into the control room." And I come into the control room. Of course, there's cocaine lined up across the desktop, right?
Oh jeez.
And it's like, "Oh, no, thanks." And so I don't know whether it was that that didn't get me the gig, and or whether the fact that I could sing and I could play guitar and I could play piano. I think Miles had kind of Jim Clench had been, and he had been going like this over songwriting, I think. And he had just got rid of Jim Clench. Why bring in another Jim Clench in terms of competing for attention or something? So I didn't get that gig. And it's interesting because I had played on a song, one of Miles' songs, and I kind of did what I ended up doing a little bit into for the show, pianistically. But he wanted me to play exactly what he'd written. And it's like, well, what's the point of having me here, right? And the only thing that made it onto that I did that made it onto the Whole World's Going Crazy album is just the most lame, the worst Hammond organ part I've ever played. All I did
Really?
was I just played chords, right? Because I was like, oh, I don't want to push any boundaries here because what's the point, right? So that was disappointing, but the time with Jerry was really good. But anyway, so I didn't get that gig. Ended up coming out west, back home, thankfully. Uh, anyway, how do we get offshoot into April Wine?
We last year talking about your solo album that almost
Oh,
happened.
yeah. Well, and there's still a bunch of those tracks, and some of them I think are really good songs. But they were just. But it's interesting when I look at Randy had me, and I think it was partly because of the success of BTO. He had that suchly strongly in his vision that I think he wanted me to, and he knew that I could sing high, so he had me singing high all the time and just kind of screaming. We had a song that he wrote called "Cry in the Night," excuse me, and I just screamed my guts out on that thing. And the interesting thing about that song is I just finished doing the lead vocal on it. It was quite late at night, and I came into the control room and we just heard that John Lennon had been shot, and it was like, wow, there's something in the air because this song was just cry in the night, and it was like, anyway, so that wasn't a solo song, but it was just so he wanted me to do that, and and I look at back on it, and the Ironhorse stuff when I listen to it is a bit disappointing to me because I think I'm better than that, and what I mean by that is, what's your hurry, darling, for instance, which it was a wonderful experience to, Randy had co-written it with Carl Wilson, the Beach Boys, and one of the most memorable things I've ever had happen was after the session one night we went into the downstairs of the barn with the studio in Linden, Washington, and Carl got out a guitar and just started singing, playing acoustic guitar and singing songs that had never made it onto Beach Boys albums. And I was
Wow.
like, we'd had cell phones in those days, right? They were beautiful, beautiful chord progressions, great guitar playing, beautiful melodies, great lyrics. And it was like, oh, and of course he's gone now, so those are all gone. And it's like, what a shame. Anyway, back to the so Randy, and he was right. Randy says, only just hit him with everything you've got. And if you think about music today, where you have to get the attention of the algorithm for I think 30 seconds, and then it counts. So what they do is you put the big hook right off the top. You go for 30 seconds, and then who cares, right? If you lose the listener, the viewer, you still got the 0.0000 cent in
Yeah.
streaming royalties, right? So what's your hurly darn? He said, oh, it's just so great with you singing all the harmonies right off the bat, right? And it's like, yeah, I get that, but for me, I like a song to develop and grow. So in terms of the Hot Shots project, I'm thinking of putting together, and I've been looking at some other gigs. I just got dumped from a from from a benefit I was going to do, and and one of the songs I was going to do just with piano and voice was a bit of What's Your Hurry, Darling, going into Back to You, which is on the Flying Colors album because they're both in E, right? But for me, I'd rather start. I don't know if you can hear. Every night when I'm away from your side, all the tears that I cried, when I think how hard we tried, and started out more as just a singer. I don't know, can you hear the
Yeah.
piano and the voice?
I hear that perfectly.
Okay. I'm never quite sure in Zoom how the level should be. Um, a little bit more intimate and a little bit more just a guy at the piano, right? And start like that. And then when you get to about the second chorus, excuse me, all the harmonies are wailing away and it grows and it takes you on a journey. And that's kind of how I like to do stuff. I know Randy used to criticize me in Round Round We Go. He says, Frank, you waited too long to get to the hook, the chorus, because I did two verses and then did the chorus. And he was right about that too, right? And we actually re-recorded Round Round We Go with him, and first verse bang into the chorus. And yeah, I think it is stronger. I think it is better. The other thing, of course, his solo work was just amazing. And we also re-recorded Quiet Desperation, and and of course the original had been ruined, I think, by not David Steele, singer, by Howard Steele. He took our material. We had about a 3 week break between finished recording and then mixing, and he took it back home to L.A. And Howard would do this thing where he would call up all his buddies and ingratiate himself by giving them triple overtime to replace parts that Trooper had played. And there was one song on Flying Colors that Smitty had done a really nice guitar solo. And the thing that we had developed with Smitty, and I think Randy was part of that because he does that naturally, and I think I have a good sense of it, is the solos aren't just right. What I refer to as musical masturbation. Just, they would have a connection to the song. So, for instance, two for the show, Randy and I basically came up with a dee da da dee da ba da da dum ba do 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 do, right, melodic, and gets you. And of course, you think of Randy, bum bum ba da 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 dum ba down 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 down, you can sing that melody, right, and it's a hook, and so that was one of the songs. On Quiet Desperation, he got the keyboard player from Toto, and they're amazing musicians. Oh yeah, yeah, he replaced Smitty's solo with he had Steve Lukather come in. No, not Steve Lukather. Yeah, Steve Lukather from Toto, and he played what I call one, a one take wanking solo, and it was hot, right?
Yeah.
But it was like, well, that's not kind of what we do. What Smitty did there was better. And so on Quiet Desperation, he got the keyboard player, um, the other Porcaro, the not Jeff on drums, Steve Porcaro. No, I don't. Anyway, I'm getting old. He replaced the whole middle section with just a synth pad. And what I had done is I had a thing called an Elka Rhapsody string synthesizer, and I had it adjusted so that I had a knob on the top that I could adjust the vibrato. And instead of playing the string parts as a chord, I did one at a time. And so with each one, I did the vibrato, because it's like the vibrato comes in slowly and then increases, right, as you're bowing. Sorry about this. Uh, and so what I created is 4 to 6 in separate lines for each part, and it sounded like a string section. I mean, it sounded like real strings. It was really quite spectacular. He killed that and replaced it with just a synth pad. It's like, what the heck are you doing? So when we re-recorded it with Randy, we put a bunch of ooh harmonies in the background, and Randy played Randy Bachman solo, and it's just wonderful, right? And the other thing he did is that when it goes living in quiet desperation, so living in quiet desperation, he would go da 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 da, like one of these little rapid 16th note things, a la kind of Queen, and it was just phenomenal. He says, that's such a great little turnaround. Let's do it twice. So we would actually did it twice in that version, and it's so much better than the Trooper version.
Where's that version? Is that anywhere?
I can send it to you. I think I've got it. Well, those things are all just sitting, right? And of course, that one, that's, MCA probably still owns the rights to that. I tried putting up a video of, the acoustic version of me on guitar. No, not the guitar one, but I did one of Round Round We Go, and I couldn't monetize it. Or I tried monetizing it, and they said, nope, you don't own it. And it was like MCA had the rights, right? It's like, well, wait a second. If I promote this song, you'll make all the money anyway. Leave me alone.
Yeah,
I could put
really.
the video up, but I couldn't monetize it. It's so corrupt. Back to politics again.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it's be a
sorry, I'm
constant.
getting off
Right.
track. My mind wanders. That's kind of who I
No,
guess.
it makes it really interesting. Two questions about two songs that like so Symphony from
Yeah,
Ironhorse was released as a single.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it actually hit the charts in Regina and Winnipeg. The West has better taste in music than the East. Let's be honest.
Man, no, it doesn't need so. It's
Really.
about. It's very well. I enjoyed doing that song. First of all, the progression is neat. Um, the stage is set. Um, still remember it.
Right, that's awesome.
It's pretty scary. Um, it's not so much about when your career is over. It was just the loneliness of being on the road. You get, you drive, especially in Canada. See, in the States, people don't realize rock bands in the U.S. You can go from L.A. to to Florida. That's like going from Vancouver to Hope. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like no big deal. Whereas touring in Canada, if you have ever sat in a truck doing 50 miles an hour maximum up the number three, Salmo Creston, and with no air conditioning, and you're brain dead, no cell phones, no games to play, no MP3s to listen to. It's just awful, right? So you do this thing, and it was quicker and easier to drive a van down by the river. Sorry, a little Chris Farley memory. Um, than taking it, because if see what happens, you finish the show say at midnight, takes you 2 or 3 hours to wind down. Then you have to get up at 10 to be at an airport 2 hours ahead of time. You end up getting no sleep. So flying is not an option. It doesn't work. So you end up just doing all this driving, and it's brain killing. You know. Um, and then you do a sound check, which is kind of cool. Have have a rush dinner, wash your hair, bang, do the show, which is an hour and 15 minutes. That's life. Out of 24 hours, you have an hour and a half of the height, and then the other 23 and a half hours are drudgery or exhaustion with people you're not sure are on your side, and it's horrible. So when you go back to your room, you're alone. Your family's back home, and you're by yourself. And that's the symphony. When the symphony is over, it's not just when your career is over. It's also when the show is over for the night, and you're all alone. And so yeah, it's kind of a neat tune, and
Yeah,
I just like.
it's a great
What do you?
rock song too. It just goes.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that I think that was. I think did Randy write that himself? I
I think
don't know.
Randy and there's two writers, Randy and actually the guy they let go of.
Oh, oh really? Oh, okay. It's gone. Things come and go.
Yeah, it's
And I didn't do drugs, so it's just old age.
yeah.
So,
I'm worried. I'm only 53, and my memory sometimes, so I'm worried about the later days.
the thing I do
But
now is like I'll be making tea because I'm a tea granny, and I boil the kettle, and I got the mug there, and I thought, oh, I better put a tea bag in. So I go to the fridge, and it's like, what am I doing here? What was I doing? Oh yeah, the tea bag over here. It's like,
uh,
the human mind is a terrible thing to waste.
yeah, but it slowly goes on. Yeah. So next stop, London from next album had a similar theme about touring, doesn't it? And
Yeah,
Symphony,
well,
they connected.
that was supposed to be for the solo album, and I was doing. it was kind of a police kind of approach to it.
Hmm.
I think we were trying to be a little bit like with my stuff. Randy would kind of like, oh, that's a little bit like so and so. One thing I really liked about Randy when we were talking about the solo album, he said, I think you have a quality of Steve Winwood to your voice and your writing. And I just love Steve Winwood,
That's quite a
Bring
compliment.
me a higher love. And um, see a chance to take it, find romance. Da dee da, what can be da 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 dee ba dum. Are you still free? Can it be a great synth? Great synth sounds. So yeah, I love Steve Winwood. Always had even from the early days, and of course the best rock and my opinion the best rock and roll song ever written was Steve Winwood on vocals for the Spencer Davis group. Give me some lovin'.
Oh, that's a great track.
I mean, that's the quintessential of all time rock song. Just anyway.
Well,
Side
it's
note.
interesting because Randy Bachman complimented you in his reading his book about a singer, and he described that you brought a melodic sense to
Yes.
his music, which you really hear if you go back to BTO style, and then you hear the Ironhorse album and Union albums. Union albums a little more BTO and less melodic, but then you still hear that melodic side in it, and that must come a lot from your vocals and your what you brought to the table.
Yeah, I think so. And as I say, if I'd been allowed to, and it wasn't allowed, it was just, I mean, I guess, I deferred so much to Randy. That's not Randy's fault. You know what I mean? We could just come up with ideas and hooks. And he had stuff he had done. He had a song called Emily that we co-wrote, and his daughter's name was Emily. So he had this, and he had this beautiful chord progression. I don't know if I can remember it. No one knows she's waiting still for Emily. Silently she'll always grieve for Emily. And every day from dawn till dusk, so patiently poor Emily stares out to sea. And it's a beautiful song. And for me, I was at the lyrics. He had the chord progression all done. It was just like, oh, that's beautiful, and the melody, I think. But for lyrics, there was a show called "The Man Who Fell from Grace from the Sea," which you'd have to look up. It's an amazing movie. Um, it's about this. It's from the perspective of this kid whose mom keeps sort of falling in love with the ship's captains who come into their remote little village, and they fall in love. And then at some point, the captain goes back to the sea because his love for the sea is stronger than love for this boy's mom, right? And then at the end, in the last one, the captain that falls in love with the mom and vice versa decides to give up the sea for the mom.
Oh,
And so you think, oh, isn't this lovely? So the kid murders the captain.
no,
It's a horror movie,
which is
right? And it's just like, uh, but forget the horror side of it. That movie for me, that was the inspiration because it's of the woman, the loneliness of the woman when the guy, rejects her to go back for the love of the ocean. And so, and every day from dawn till dusk, so patiently, poor Emily stares out to sea. So every day she goes down to the shore and, looks out to the ocean to a lost love. A very sad song. Anyway, oh, I've got 10 minutes still. Yeah. Sorry.
no
Um,
problem.
we can keep doing this as long as you got time and patience. I'm not going anywhere.
I'm enjoying
Um,
this.
uh, so Emily. Uh, oh, so one day, Randy came and says, "Oh, there's a guy that's dropping into the studio who loves Emily, the song," and it was Robert Goulet.
Really?
Yeah, and it's like, you know, wow, what that's weird, eh?
Yeah.
Anyway, and then about a year later, I get a royalty check from Spain for about $3, and it's for Emily because
Oh well.
Robert Goulet had recorded it, and I guess it was released in Spain, and I made $3, and that may be the only money I made from working with Randy for a year and a half.
Well, that's
It's like,
crazy.
yeah, it's ridiculous. It's like, well, I when I signed on to work with him, I kind of wanted to be feel like an equal because I'd had success in Trooper as a keyboard player singer, and I didn't want it ever to be like I was using his fame. You know what I mean? I wanted to be partners with him, and it was really good that way. But after a year and a half, it was I was kind of getting low on survival money, right? So it was like, oh, I can't do this any longer. And of course, because of his divorce, we had talked about doing some dates like that Ironhorse one, and he was canceling them because he was afraid that if he went off on tour again, then he would lose access to the kids in the divorce proceedings. So I had no way to generate a living for my family, and that was part of like I can't do this anymore. Uh, but in terms of why I did it, it to me it made sense. It's, as I say, I didn't want to ever be using him. Oh, I'm working with this big guy, the star. Yeah, you should pay me money. It was funny because I got when I was working at the studio in London, I would get my royalty checks from Trooper, which were pretty tiny, would come to his studio address because MCA they would send, and so it's like, oh good, $500 maybe if I'm lucky, and so I get down there one day and in the studio and it's time you get it 3 times a year I think it is. So there is a check from MCA, and it's like, thank heavens it's come in. So I rip it open, and it's like, oh, it's not for me, it's for Randy, and this would be 1980s, and I don't know when American Woman came out. It'd be like the 60s, right?
Late 60s, I think. Yeah.
This was a 3 times a year residual check just for American Woman for $100,000, right? It
Which
was
back then was a lot of money, well, a ton of money back in 1980, 81.
kidding. So I'm looking at that. It's like, that's not for me. It's like, "Oh, Randy, I'm so sorry. I thought it was for me, and then oh, there's mine over here. Yeah, $385.07. It's like, oh, I'll buy a quart of milk. Anyway, the other thing, I remember Randy used to say, Frank, you should invest in Krugerrands. And I didn't have the heart to tell him, Randy, I don't have enough spare money to buy you know, a wooden nickel, much less a Krugerrand, right? And it was
Right.
like, it's like a German gold coin. And I think, when you get to be a big star and make serious coin, you kind of lose touch with what it's like you know, to be regular folk. But I think it's sort of funny in retrospect to think about it. It's like, Randy, I believe you, I trust you, but you don't get it. You don't understand. I'm dying here.
Which is really too bad because I mean, is the money's all in the songwriting, and although you have some songwriting credits, they're not the singles usually,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Like Next Up London was your you're
It
right,
was
but
mostly my tune. Yeah,
but by that time that the record company had kind of gave up on the band.
yeah. Well, they no, it was self survival. It was a survival thing for Scotti Brothers because they were going to get shut down by the government and be in deep, deep, deep trouble. So we were collateral damage.
Yeah, because they came back. I know Survivor ends up on that label when they hit it big a couple years later.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. They came back after a couple months.
Uh,
And then, so we didn't get to the portrait part. We'll have to renew in 4 minutes. But with portrait, so there we are. Fred's in, and that first album is kind of like part Union and part leftover Frank Ludwig and Randy Bachman or whatever. So it's kind of a scattered album. But the head of portrait, Main Street USA, again starts to take off right away. That's the first single, and it's looking quite exciting. And then it kind of just sits there, and again, it's like, well, it's not going on the majors. And this is so Randy phones up the record label, head of portrait, says, "What do we do to get on the majors?" And he says, "Oh, you need to do independent promotion." Excuse me. And Randy said, "Well, how do we do that?" He says, "Well, he said you pay Cal Rudman uh, to promote your album." And Cal Rudman has a tip sheet. I think he may still have it. I don't know. It's called the Rudman Report. And Cal Rudman would suddenly appear on the Merv Griffin show, and he'd have this artist that had been around for a long time. Said, "Oh, the new album, Kim Carnes album, it's going to be huge." Guess what? She's got Betty Davis eyes. Huge hit. So I was like, wow. And then a couple weeks later, there he is. He's on with Steve Winwood. "Oh, I've got a new song. If you see a chance." And a couple weeks later, huge hit. So it's like this Cal Rudman, he's got the goods, right?
yeah.
Well, it turns out so you need to get Cal Rudman to promote your product. 110,000 for the first single. It's a three single deal. 110 for the first, 100 for the second, and 90 for the third. And and Randy said to the head of portrait guy, he says, "Well, if you believe in us, why don't you pay it?" And the head of portrait says, "Oh, we can't do that. We'd be in deep doo doo with the government for payola." And Randy said, "Well, we can't do it." I mean, Randy probably could have afforded it, right? But I couldn't, chip in on that one.
Yeah.
So gone. That was the end of Union. Yeah. So that's the truth of the matter. That's the reality of the biz, and not every hit is done that way, and not every hit has been as a result. And the bottom line for Steve Winwood and Betty and Kim Carnes, the albums were good. The quality was there. Otherwise, nothing would have happened.
Yeah.
Not with Cal Rudman, right? But it was like and what would happen? I guess out of that 110,000, probably 10 grand went to the program director in Philadelphia, 10 grand to the New York, you know, big station there, and all the biggest stations, L.A. and whatever. Bang, you get airplay, and if you get airplay, you'll get a hit. And I guess that's what's frustrating for me now is I think I'm writing better material than ever, or at least as good material. And I've got a whole new album ready to go now, and I think, oh, maybe I'll release it in the summer. Well, summer's almost over now. Oh, maybe I'll release it in September. And then I realize there's not really any point. And you go online and you get these offers from different people to teach you how to work the algorithms, and it's like, well, wait a second, I'm going to have to do this myself, and I'm going to have to pay at the end of it all, not including advertising payments directly to I don't know who, radio stations or whatever. I'm in for 9,000 euros, which is like probably 15 grand, right? I can't afford to do that, right? Nor do I want, nor do I want to, right? So it's kind of like I'm out of my league now. I don't these things that became hit through a TikTok thing. Yeah, I don't have the goods on that. Don't know how to. I really don't know how to manipulate the technology. I'm fairly tech savvy. I've got a good little studio, but